preparing for them this season. But we'll move on from there. Men's media day is tomorrow, of course. Michigan State, Purdue are the two names that just jump off at the top. Who's in that third slot?
Well, I think that probably the most common team that's mentioned for that third spot is Maryland. They bring back Jameer Young, so they're really rock solid with the ball in their hands. They have multiple guys around him who are all very capable players. They lost some talent, to transfer off of last year's team, which made the tournament and won a game. Played in an 8-9 game against West Virginia and advanced before losing to Alabama in the second round. So they lost one key player off of that, who's now at Villanova. But they still have some really good, solid players there, some promising big guys. So there's some talent there. What's interesting to me about the Michigan State-Purdue circumstance is that if you ask me who's going to win this league and who would I put my house on winning the league, it would be Purdue. Absolutely. Because they've got everything they need. They should be better than they were last year. But if you ask me which team in the league is most likely to win the national championship, it would be Michigan State, because they've got the level of the guys, the difference-making guys. Now, they have to become difference makers. I don't mean like the really good college guys like Tyson Walker, A.J. Hoggard. Those guys are really good college players, and they'll have a future in pro basketball somewhere after this, maybe in the NBA, maybe somewhere else, probably in the NBA. But the first-round picks that you need to have in order to win it every year. I keep going back to this every year since '87, since your Indiana Hoosiers won it without a first round pick. Everybody else since. That's a long history. And so when I look at a team like Purdue, I look at it and I'm like, I'm not sure. Is Roosevelt Colvin an NBA guy? Well, I don't know. He wasn't rated that highly coming out of high school, like in terms of like he's gonna. But maybe they missed on him. Maybe they missed on him like they did Zach. I mean, like they did a couple of years ago. Not Zach, but now I'm blanking on.
Michigan State.
No, for Purdue.
Ivy?
Yes, Jaden Ivey. Yeah, maybe they missed on him like they missed on Jaden Ivey. But what happened in Europe suggested maybe. But until I see that, I feel hesitant to say that they could do it. The same with Michigan. A lot of Kansas. A lot of Kansas people. A lot of Kansas is number one people. But when I pick a number one team, I'm not talking about like who's going to be number one in the polls. I don't even care. When I pick a number one team in the preseason, that's who I'm saying that's the team that's going to win it. Now, I'm not right most of the time. Most of us aren't. But that's the one that I say that's the one I believe can win it. And I don't know that Kansas has that player either. Just as I'm not sure Purdue has, I'm not sure that Kansas does, but I'm pretty sure that Michigan State has maybe too. With Carr, that adds another component to that. So I think that they have the ability to do it, and it's been since 2000 or 2002, if you want to give the Maryland Terrapins their due, but it's a long way.
Another Indiana reference there.
Oh, sorry about that. That's a negative one to some respects, but that's a long time either way. Even if you want to give it to Maryland, and the teams you're bringing in, they've been to the Final Four since, but they haven't won one either. So this is a conference that has been fabulous at basketball for a very long time, but hasn't been able to get that final, hurdle to conquer that final hurdle and win a national championship.
That's a unique stat that I did not know about not having a number one. Yeah. Indiana actually has two unique stats from there. They are also the last team to win a national championship that does not have names on the back of their jerseys.
That is somewhat true.
Kansas did change.
Kansas, Kansas, I believe that year was home. It's crazy. Home, they had the names on. Road, they didn't. And they were the road team in the final. So I'm pretty sure that they did not, when Danny Manning and the Miracles won it, I believe they did not have theirs
I think they do on both now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That they've gotten past that. I'm still a believer that, especially now in the NIL era, there's no reason not to have names on your jersey. It's not, and it's the idea. Like, whenever coach would say, I want you to play for the name on the front of the jersey, not the name on the back. I'm like, you know what? If you're a great coach, I think you should be able to pull that off. I don't think that's that tough because we've got 30 years of history that show that you can do it.
And I responded on a board post the other day, and this was in high school, but I said, we had their names on our back of our jerseys. I said, do you know the only time that I thought about it is when they first handed it to them. I'm like, wow, that's cool. Other than that, it was never a thought because I was worried about getting my head taken off, not about what was on the top of the back of my jersey. So I think that is the biggest load. And I think it's old school thinking.
Yes.
These guys are playing to win.
Yes.
The fact that the name's on the back of their jersey, it has zero relevance to what is going on in the game, going on in the practice, what they're thinking about. These guys are putting in hours and hours of work, whether it's on the court or wherever. So, I'm like, okay, get over it, guys. They tried to do that with football. They took the names off for like a year, and that did not work at all. So
I am a huge fan of tradition in college sports. I love the candy striped pants. I love the mop lady.
It actually started with the swim team.
There you go. I love the mop lady coming down the hall, and I love no matter what school I go to, if they're showing me a video of all the great players in their past, it gets me a little bit. I feel it. Even I'm not a fan, of any particular school, but it gets me because I love the game and I love its tradition. I go to Kentucky and I see that. If I go to I go to a school that has great tradition and their pregame hype video doesn't have any tradition in it, I'm like, you guys don't know what you're doing. You have to, you've got this great All-American and this guy that, that happened to be like a fan favorite and all the rest. And this moment where you guys shot a buzzer beater in and won whatever big game, and you're not showing that to your fans to get them hyped, you're missing the point. So I'm a big believer in that. But the one thing I'm not a fan of is this idea that you have to have no names on your jerseys because Indiana's never had them or Penn State football's never had them or whomever. That doesn't mean anything. That's not a tradition. That's a bad habit.
The best tradition is winning.
Yes.
Just the old Al Davis line. It's one of the greatest. Just win, baby. Just win. And that is the greatest tradition. And if you're winning, that's what people care about. That's what they focus on. And as you mentioned, NIL, you want to sell some jerseys? I guarantee you will sell more jerseys with names on them because people may buy the same number 4 jersey because one was Victor Oladipo and one's somebody else. There's just options, which I didn't mean to turn this into a discussion on that, but it's just one of those things that I'm like, Indiana, there was a lot of flack on the board when Indiana wore the black jerseys in football a couple of weeks ago. I'm like, who cares? Oh, those are Purdue colors. I'm like, no, that's a neutral color, man. Everybody does that. I'm like, and who cares? I'm like, is it really that big of a deal?
If they were black and gold jerseys, that would be Purdue colors for sure. That is definitely a Purdue color. But
I said Notre Dame is like one of the only schools that I can see where black just would not work for them.
I don't think it would work. No, I don't think that would work for them. But you never know. I mean, if you put some, now if black and gold there would look, black and green. I don't know. I'd have to see it, but I have my doubts.
Getting back to basketball, there are several teams, Illinois, Ohio State, that we don't know a lot, Indiana, that has made a lot of additions, that we know that there's a lot of talent there. They've got talent coming back with Xavier Johnson, Trey Galloway, guys like that, wondering what CJ Gunn and Caleb Banks, they're going to grow with Malik Renew. So we just don't know. And so we just don't know what those teams are going to be like, how they're going to gel. and play out. We'll find out, but that's going to be fun looking into this season.
One of the interesting things about that is that when you think about it, like if you have talent, you're probably going to do okay. Like, because last year, Illinois is a great example. Illinois comes and they bring in Matthew Meyer and they bring in Terrence Shannon and they bring in some really good freshmen. And they had some guys who were remaining players, who were good, solid players. And even though they never fit together, they never gelled, they never really connected, there were still moments when the talent got them through, or they did connect for just that night. Maybe the way the opponent played them, or maybe they all happened to like each other that day, or whatever it was. But there was still enough for them to have a season that got them into the tournament. Was it a disappointment? Yes. Was it frustrating? Yes. Do they want to go through that again? Not at all. They want now for this team to be more fluid and more connected. Terrence Shannon, a player that at times looked to be someone that needed to play harder for Illinois than, and I think that, like, if he comes back with the idea that Illinois is the first, then he will fulfill all the people. Today's media poll has him as a first teamer, almost a unanimous. I wouldn't have voted for him because I want to see it. I know how talented he is, but I want to see him become the leader that he's capable of being. Because if he is, Illinois is going to be another of those teams that are fighting with Michigan State and Maryland and Purdue for the first spots in this league. I believe that Wisconsin has a chance to have a really good year. The one thing that is that when I said if you have talent, the one thing that can interrupt that, and we saw it last year with Wisconsin when Tyler Wall got hurt, they were a completely different team. They don't make it. Ohio State, they were really good the first 6 weeks. Zed Key gets hurt, not good at all the last 8 or 10. I mean, they were really not good. They were 5-15 in the league. But Zed's back. He should be healthy. They've got a chance to be very good. So health is a really important factor. It's the one. There's two factors here: talent and health. If you have talent, you're going to be okay. But you have to have health with that. If you have talent, health, and connection, then you're up there, you're fighting with the teams that we know will have those things. We know Michigan State's going to have it. We know Purdue's going to have it. But if you put those three components together, you can be at least in their neighborhood. And being in their neighborhood is a good place to be.
Speaking of Indiana, they have a very different team this year, not just in personnel, but the type of personnel. This is not going to be an offense that is run through Trace Jackson Davis or anyone, period, any one person. It's not going to go through Khalil Ware. It's not going to go through Malik Renew. It's not going to go through Mackenzie Mbako or even Xavier probably. He's the guy with the ball in his hands, but unless someone really establishes himself, I think.
Well, it won't be like last year or the last several years because there are only so many guys with Trace's, especially now. There are only so many guys with Trace's low post ability on every level. He had it all in the low post. He was a great passer out of there. He was a phenomenal finisher. Great at bouncing it into better positions in the post. He did everything down there. And those guys come along. I mean, the last one IU had probably was Jared Jeffries. There just aren't very many that can do the things that they could do in the low post. But that also opens you up to more different ways to score. I think that it's possible that it could run through one of those gentlemen that you mentioned. Mbako might be the one who becomes the most obvious candidate, and then everybody else plays off it. I mean, obviously it's going to start with Xavier Johnson and his ability to run the point. But it usually helps to have someone that like this, like when we're struggling to get something going, or we're starting to look at the opposing team's run, we want to get it to this person in this spot, so something he can make it happen for us, even if it's not a basket. And it usually helps at what I usually refer to as a first option. It really helps to have that player. You don't have to have it to be successful. Florida 2006 and 7 never had a first option. They just had options. So you don't have to have that, but it does help to have it because it does help prevent runs. It does help give your team stability, because even if there's a first option, that doesn't mean that the second, third, and fourth options aren't getting plenty of action and plenty of opportunities to score. So it'd be probably best for IU if they can find someone in that grouping that can be the guy that they want to go to in those tough spots. And I would say that over the course of the first month or so of practice and then the exhibition games, those things kind of sort themselves out. And players know, like they want, because a lot of times, like if there is a first option like a Trace, it makes everybody else look better. Even though they might get a few less shots because it's going to end up in Trace's hands, I'm going to get more good looks because we have Trace and everybody's diving at him. So players know, and they'll gravitate toward that. They won't gravitate toward that if a coach is forcing it and the player that they're forcing it toward isn't capable of handling it.
And I'm not suggesting that this is the case, but how important is it for someone like Mike Woodson to convince Mackenzie Mbako, whose goal is to not be in Bloomington next year, and that's not a negative. He wants to be in the league, but to convince him that, hey, the best way for you to get there is to make this team better.
Yes, I don't think he did that already once with Jalen a year ago. So I don't, I can't say it's not tough because I don't know Mackenzie, but if Mackenzie is a sharp young basketball player, he will recognize that the player who accepts that and doesn't listen to the person who says he needs shots or touches or whatever. If you are a success, if you have the goods, the jumping, the running, the height, the length, and all of that, if you're a successful team player, they're going to see that. These guys are remember, these are the scouts for the best league on the planet. They don't care how many points you score unless your job is to score points. If it is and you don't, then that's a problem. But if your job, and I don't, again,
Giannonobi comes to mind.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. They see it. They know that they understand the game better than the guy who's whispering, you need touches, you need shots. They understand what makes successful teams. Now, Mackenzie Mbako probably isn't going to be a guy that goes into the league and is expected to score 20-plus points a game. Maybe he grows into that. I don't know. But he probably, the way his game is built and the way he's built, that's probably not what what they probably are going to want to see from him is a guy who can do everything. Guard, rebound, handle the ball, pass it, make shots. They're going to want to see everything from him. And all that comes into play in terms of commitment to team. If you do all of those things because you want to make IU better and have a great season and get to the Final Four and all of that, like the scouts are really smart, but they'll also, they also understand there's emotion involved. It's not that so much that they're emotional. They understand there's emotion involved in the game of basketball. And if you contribute to those things at the college level, and you have all the goods that I talked about before, then there's a good chance you're going to contribute to those at a professional level. If you're not a committed team player, like they can see that. There was a player I covered once, I don't need to name him, but there was a player I covered once who had an obvious example, a very obvious example that was on television, nationally televised, of being not a team player. And before, in advance of their draft, this was back when I was a beat writer, in advance of the draft that year, I got calls from scouts saying, what happened there? What's up with that? What kind of kid is this? Like, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have gotten those. They would have just said, well, he won. He plays defense. He plays hard. Okay, we're good. But he had that, so he had to get over that hurdle. So that all comes into it for a player on it. But if you're on a team like that and you're constantly encouraging your teammates and lifting them up and connecting and having great body language, the scouts want to see that. That gets you drafted. In addition, but of course, obviously, you have to be able to have all the physical tools as well, and they can see those just based on the tape and the tests and all of that.
I think it was the movie Draft Day. It may not have been, but I remember that whoever the quarterback that was the runaway number one guy, everybody was on everybody, but the one GM was like, there's something not off. And they looked at there was a video of his birthday celebration. And they said, do you notice anything? There's not a single teammate there. And yeah, that was a movie, but sounds like exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's exactly right. Like they look through all of that. They want to know. And they're going to talk to, look, you call the coach. The coach is going to say, great kid, great player, because the coach wants the kid drafted. because it's once he's on your team, he's your problem. And they can say, look, we put this guy in the first round, or lottery, or whatever. So you're unless you have a really close relationship with that particular coach, you're probably you're only going to get the straight story if the straight story is a good story. So they're going to look a lot of places to find the negative if there's negative that exists. And look, it is not hard for a basketball player to be a team player. It really isn't. You listen to your coaches. You work with your teammates. If you have a difficult teammate, someone that's hard to cooperate with, then if you're the best player, then you can maybe, address that situation with your coach and say, hey, look, I can't get this guy to screen for me, or whatever it is. Or I pass the ball, he never passes it back. The coaches will be aware of that, unless those rare instances where it's the coach's kid, you'll be fine. So for a guy like Mackenzie coming in here, his best path is to listen to what his coaches say and connect with his teammates. What the people, whether it's agents or just, people from, and look, I'm not saying Mackenzie has those people that would be negative. I'm talking about other people in the past that have negatively influenced other players. But it's always best. It's the best case scenario is for you to connect with your teammates and to play team basketball, because that will lead to the league. I'm telling you, it does time after time. It gets you drafted. It gets you a job. Fran Fraschilla, my buddy from ESPN, points out that of the 450 or so players in the NBA ballpark, about 430 of them are role players. So
everybody cannot be the scorer.
Yes, everybody's not going to be the star. Not everybody's going to be Kevin
Dennis
Durant.
Rodman was not the scorer.
No, and he's in the Hall of Fame. John Havlicek scored a ton of points, but on a lot of his teams, he was coming off the bench. So there's just a lot of examples of that to show you that the success in basketball is mostly done through connecting with 5 other players, whether it's Caitlin Clark connecting with 4 other women, or it's Trace Jackson Davis connecting with 4 other guys. Success in basketball goes through team success. There's not a lot of happy people out there. There's a lot of rich people, but there's not a lot of happy people out there